And good evening, everyone. Live here from Bendigo. I do apologise. I had some technical difficulties with this before. My camera was playing up. I've got the new little attached camera, and on top of that was giving me a rear view. Managed to get that sorted out. Then when I went to press go live, it was just sitting there loading for some time. So I had to reboot the whole thing. Hopefully, people will catch on to this very shortly. Once again, I do apologise about the technical makeup here, but listen, modern technology or computers, they're generally evil and they must be punished. They certainly, well, when you want them to work, when you exactly want them, right on the dot time, there's always something got to go wrong. I don't know why. Yeah, we've perfected this before. Well, look, speaking from here, from Bendigo, Central Victoria, land of the Judge are wrong. I'm just paying my respects to the elders past, present and future. And I also acknowledge that their struggles are our struggle as well. And that's all part of the ongoing class struggle. But tonight I actually just wanted to talk a little bit about who owns our food. And I asked why I wanted to talk about this. When I was out doing another site visit today in a town about 2 hours east of here. What was interesting, I was just went to grab some bite to eat and a cup of coffee, and on there near their counter was a regional newspaper, Weekly Times. I generally don't pay too much attention or read to it, but what was catchy was a headline to it, and basically says who owns our food. Very interesting. And what happens, and I'm surprised actually a paper like this would produce something like this, is actually the amount of multinationals that own our food brands. And it's surprising enough, we only own very few, or actually very few of our food brands are actually Australian owned. Most of them are actually all foreign owned by the big multinationals. And what they were saying, there was the 35 well-known Aussie foods has found only 8 are Australian owned. Now, do I go any further? 8 are Australian owned in the bourgeois sense. So they're not nationalised and I will be, etc. They're not in public ownership, etc. But I want to read this here. First, I'll read this article, and we'll do a little discussion on it. The Great Aussie Food Heist. Most iconic Aussie food brands founded right here in Australia are now owned by giant foreign companies. An investigation by the Weekly Times of 35 well-known Aussie foods has found only 8 are Australian owned. And 3 of those brands, 4 and 20, Vegemite and Rosella, were only put back into Australian hands in the last 2 decades. More than half of the 35 began as small Australian family-owned businesses that grew to become household names. And another 4 were originally local farmer cooperatives. Today, the US is the biggest owner of the major brands, holding 11, followed by the UK, including British Dutch giant Unilever, with 5, and Switzerland, the home of Nestle, with 4. Others are owned by companies in Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, and the Philippines. How and where many of the brands first fell out of Australian hands is unclear, with complex histories of acquisitions, mergers, amalgamations, and spin-offs. University of Melbourne consumer psychologist Dr. Brent Coker said Australian food brands were attractive to foreign companies because our production was considered high quality, and iconic brands were known as cash cows because they had deep roots. A lot of products have a life cycle, but cash cows are long-term and reliable, Dr. Coker said. Arnott's changed its logo recently, their corporate logo, and everyone was complaining about it on social media and freaking out, and that's how kind of the power these brands have, the iconic status. Dr. Coker said many consumers would be surprised to know who owned Australia's iconic foods. While it was in Australia's best interest to have control over its food, there was a disconnect of what consumers think is happening and what actually is happening with foreign ownership. Dr. Coker said it was more important consumers knew where the food was made, as foods made in Australia were still required to be at an Australian standard of quality, no matter who owned them. The food ingredients labelling is the big one, he said. Made from locally imported ingredients is about the extent put on food products, but it is insufficient and not enough. I'll try to investigate that article further. Yeah, but obviously you have to subscribe to the newspaper, and I'm not going to subscribe to it. But look, I'm a keen fan of the newspaper in general. It's a regional newspaper, more to do for the farming side. But what was interesting, the most popular brands that we're used to, such as Edgells, Golden Circle, Chico, also Cadbury, etc., and other things like even Aeroplane Jelly. Aeroplane Jelly is owned by McCormick and Company in the US. Brands such as Cadbury Chocolate, they makes Cherry Ripes and Freddo Frogs, owned by Mondelez International in the US. Chico Roll, JR Simplot & Co. US. Edgells, JR Simplot Co. US. And obviously Golden Circle, Kraft Heinz Company US. And there's many more as well. I can go through now. I think we need to have that we could think about a good discussion about when moving forward about our food brands, things we do take in common. Yes, a lot of them are still manufactured here, which is vitally important. But the ultimate decisions for our food production is obviously made in the boardrooms from overseas companies. I know that there are boardrooms here too of multinationals are based out of Australia as well. There is no actual worker community control, no actual planned economy around our food production. It's all geared to do one thing, make profit. And unfortunately, when the multinationals have now moved in for all the last 40 years of taking over our food brands, everything is dictated to by the shareholders, be it on Wall Street, London, New York, etc., or Paris, etc. And fact is, what we got here is they'll make decisions that will have ongoing and long-term effects on the community where these things are manufactured, but on the growers as well, but also on our society at large. And this is a big problem. This is our food production. This is a vital, essential industry that we need. We need food to eat. That was one of the very four common parts of our human survival: clothing, food, shelter, and water. Yes, we've got other things as well, but they're your four primary ones. And now they're being used there just to make profit. And any decisions being to close down plants, and that can have long-term effects on us. So one of the most important things I think for our struggle, any imperialist struggle, is also putting food production back on the agenda as well, and getting back into common ownership of the means of production here in Australia, back under the people's control. What ideally should be, yes, besides being nationalised, and let's not use the term nationalisation loosely or divorced from what it actually means. Yes, be under public ownership or under worker co-op community control. So it can be either worker community control and including the growers as well, or it can be under a public ownership and around a planned economy. And this way too, food production is not there around profit. It's actually then based on need as well, and how much is required. And this is it's a very big concern when you think about it, because God knows what's actually being put into their foods. They say when they say foreign oil imported and local products are included in our foods, well, what are these local and imported products? So this is also too, it's another good question we want to put in. So when you next time you're around the supermarket or around the corner shop, wherever you're purchasing your food products, that would be a first thing. One of the first things: where's all your money going to, and who's supplying what here? And why I think we need to raise this. This is well part of a good discussion we need to have moving forward here in Australia as well, and have a control of our own destiny again. Now, when that paper, when it said about foreign owned and locally owned, they meant it in the bourgeois sense, in the sense where actually it's capitalists or a group of capitalists or businesses have got together and bought out companies or own them. So it's not actually under workers' control or community working control or nationalised by any chance. But if it was under our local bourgeoisie control, would it be any better? I'm not saying it will be, because at the end of the day, they're capitalists. The first thing they're primarily in this business for is to make profit, and they'll make decisions and how to maximise profits, regardless of what the costs to the community and the workers at large that are involved in the production of it. Let's get this over a sip of water. So that's something very interesting, is just how much of these decisions regarding around a production, how much is produced, where it's produced, and at any time they can close down plants where the decisions are made via the Australian governments or by our federal or state governments or local governments, be it that man, or any other local authority. No. Or any by the plant manager. No. They are made by the shareholders, be it on Wall Street, London, Paris, in Switzerland, Zurich, Switzerland, or wherever the headquarters is around the world. So that is actually, it should be actually a concern for everyone as well, because this is a frightening thing. If as a sovereign country such as ours, or supposedly sovereign country like ours, we haven't got control of our own food production. Never mind about the other industries at the moment, but our own food production. What does that where does that leave us? As well as the working class and the people at large. Where does it leave us? And it leaves us in a very vulnerable situation. That way, Australia is only there for one thing, as a cash cow or as a cash crop. And basically, the long-term well-being of the population will therefore go down, because it's only there and we'll be paying more and more and more for much more imported products that are brought into this country. Bit by bit, and the less we can afford what's produced as well, more we're going to start, basically less we'll be able to eat. And we've got to take into account too that all that money that we do pay for our food, most of it's going overseas. There'll be very little tax paid to the respective governments, that way where they can put and invest in more. And what's to stop these foreign nationals too from raping, pillaging the land? They're driving it down to such a degree, clearing more bush to grow more food so they can make more profit. That's all that it's doing for, not to meet our needs, not to meet our own personal needs, and to provide to make sure we do not go hungry. No. So all these decisions over and over again, I will say this again, is being made overseas, not via the government. And that's why I think there's quite a lot more history to it where I've gone into foreign hands in the first place, yet through the free trade agreements, these so-called, well, there's nothing free about free trade agreements at all. It's just basically the dictates of multinationals to do whatever they want. That's what a free trade agreement is, their ability, their freedom to go and basically override any type of legislation or any sovereign country as well, to do whatever they want to make profit. But this is something to always be taken into account. I was surprised actually this was in a paper like that would produce something like that. But it's quite interesting to start people to have the common people start talking about these things. Well, moving forward from this, out of this whole COVID-19, which obviously exposed Australia's vulnerability. We don't have a large manufacturing base, not like we did in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. It's declined so much now that we're now relying on multinationals. Come on, this is something now we should be part of the whole thing about building a manufacturing base for Australia, especially moving forward for our struggle for our own independence, for socialism, etc. Whatever you want to call it. Where profits do not dictate. Well, food production needs to be high on the agenda as well. We can talk about manufacturing of steel, our own cars, and everything else you can think of that can be manufactured, nuts and bolts, widgets and gadgets and all those things. But food production, you'd think, be high up, we're the number one priority. So that's something to take into consideration tonight. Have we got the answer tonight? How are we going to move forward? Of course not. There's going to be a lot more ongoing discussions about that. Just a reminder that myself and Dus James, we have our live 11 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Time. That will be, I believe, 8 o'clock his time on the US East Coast, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning here in Australia, Australian Eastern Daylight Time, which will be 10 o'clock Queensland, 10:30, I believe, in South Australia, and I think it's 9:30 in Northern Territory, and obviously 8 o'clock in the morning in Western Australia. So please tune in for those times. We'll obviously be talking a lot more engagement, a lot more discussion about moving forward, and some great dialogue about how we achieve social change as well. But food production, as I said, it's got to be vital. It's got to be high up on the list of all that part of the struggle as well. If we don't have control of our own food production, we're in strife. Let's face it, we're in big strife if we don't think of a strategy about how we're going to get that back under the kind of either public ownership or under a working class co-op, working worker, community co-op, etc. Phone's going off right at the moment, and we'll just ignore that. Don't they get the time? It's now past. It's nearly 8 o'clock at night. The other thing as well, talk about who owns our food. What what makes what we should be putting on demand, and especially if we're thinking about running in elections as well, is putting that high on the agenda as well. I think we get a lot of support, especially from regional communities as well, to put that on there, because it's part of a food security, and that was the word I was trying to think of. Food security. That was actually part. It should be actually part of our national security as well. It should never have been allowed to actually be falling into foreign hands, regardless about what country it is. I don't care what it is. And interesting too, I want to point this out, something out. There's been a lot of China bashing over the last year, especially around COVID-19 and how China's got this and got that, and taking our industry. Well, guess what? China wasn't mentioned in this investigation. But when it's mentioned up about US, British, European, Japanese, they say Filipino multinationals, not a word is said. So come on, I think it's hypocritical for those who want to get stuck into China and about talking about our sovereignty and food security and that, when they don't get stuck into these foreign nationals here. I think that's just double standard. In fact, it is hypocritical. Let's face it. And so basically, let's stop China bashing for starters. Let's look at what we're going to be doing about actually securing our food production again, because we need to do that. It has left Australia particularly vulnerable to the dictates of imperialism, world capital, etc. So that's where we're at the moment. I think it's good that it's a little discussion. That needs to be highlighted. I think all of us comrades around the world, we're engaged in struggle. Food production is always something that should be high on the list, because we can't struggle if we're hungry. Basically, if we're starving, we do need to eat at the end of the day. So that's something we've got to just keep in the back of your mind. It's something there's a generation. It's going to generate. I want to see generate discussion. I like to see we can talk about this much further. But I firmly believe that food production, food processing, etc., should be under worker community co-op or under public ownership. It depends on that, and under a planned economy in such a way, so that way secures our own food security, and we're not at the dictates of any multinational, be it even local, but regardless of where they are around the world. So that's quite important. We keep that in mind. How we get there, well, that needs to be the discussion we all have to have the dialogue, and have moving forward and how we can go about it. I actually believe back to One Union, and we're looking at doing the same thing. There's also too, if a factory does close down, well, workers by all means, especially here's an example. Say if one particular multinational decides to close a big plant down here in regional Victoria for whatever reason, because they can't get enough profit out of it. Well, then the community and the workers that work there should have the right to take it over and run it from there on, and own it and run it and go and keep producing. And I think that should be put back on the agenda. That's something we can put a demand in to make sure it's government policy. It's not just battled off site by site as an industrial issue. It is just a social issue, and it should be put there as government policy, regardless of who's in government, that if anything closes down in this country, well, the workers have got the right to take it over and run it along with the community and put investments in such and the government assist those to help them set that up so they can run it quite well. So that's something where we've got to have, and that would be a step forward in the right direction. Will be the solution to everything, mate. To be the answer at all? Of course not. Obviously we need to have a centrally planned economy, and that achieve that through socialism, but not through currently during the anarchy of production, the anarchy of capitalist production. So that's where we're at the moment. I'd just say it's been a hell of a long day. As I said, I've been having a bit of fun with this before. For that, once again, I do apologise. I will share this up. This will be loaded up. And for those of you who eventually do jump on board and watch this, please share this far and wide as much as possible. Subscribe to it. We'll eventually get there. Also, too, just wanted to quickly talk about something. I'm going to talk this on Dust further on Sunday as well, but the importance of ideology, divide and rule in this as well. And by far, I have just been talking on and off with people during the week about the rise of the far right. Now, that's a different discussion I want to have later on. Also, my own videos with the Dust as well. And it's been some articles about it. I believe I think it was Jacobin magazine actually made an article about the rise of the far right here in Australia, and actually how much of it is a threat, national security threat. And obviously a lot of these people, extreme right, far right people, are really dangerous too. So, yeah, and just some snippets and stories I've been hearing about it. So it certainly is. They are very dangerous people, and then certainly they've been buoyed on by the escalation of Trump. I'm sure they're hanging their hopes up on Trump being elected, because it'd certainly be a shot in the arm for them even more. And they're trying to bring that Trump-style division, polarisation here to Australia, which certainly we do not need as well here in this struggle. But that's to always be expected. And I just wanted to finish this off, the importance of ideology, divide and rule. There goes, by far the dominant ideology exerting its influence on the working class in Britain and Australia today, but also and the US today as well, is that of the imperialist bourgeoisie. Where bourgeois ideology is funded and manifest, it must serve the interests of the exploiter. And the watchword for a parasitic class in economic and political crisis and decay is divide et impera, divide and rule. And these are classic point. They will use certainly the far right to their advantage to divide and rule and polarise us even further, especially the working class, where we need to have unity now to build the unity, regardless of the colour of your skin, your browse or what your nationality or country of origin. It should be back to the old saying, black and white, unite and fight. And we're obviously, because our enemy is the capitalist class, not each other. And I'm seeing this information. I was just and seeing when I read comments on Facebook on particular pages, etc. Some are outright complete racist to outright just bad in general, and it's just like this has got to stop. We've got to get back to united, regardless of the colour of your skin. Treat those as you wish to be treated, and be them in respect and decency as well. There's no need to be divided over what religion someone is, what their skin colour is, what country of origin there is, and even what gender, male or female. So, Comrade Freaky. So that's what we've got to understand to come back, to bring us all back together as one again, black and white, unite and fight. And yeah, this is why the far right is a tool of the capitalist class to keep us divided and play on our fears as well, to fight with each other and keep the working class oppressed, to stop us, our historical mission to change the world from capitalism to socialism. So I will be talking a lot more about that and then of course the next week also with Dust, and also with my own live chats. But look, just summarise tonight. I didn't want to go too far off track. I just wanted to go back to that discussion about who owns our food. Once again, I just wanted to highlight that fact tonight. It was quite an I only stumbled across that article in the Weekly Times today, the regional newspaper, about the amount of foreign multinationals that own our food production in this country. It is phenomenal. It's actually wrong, to be honest with you. And like I said, I'll just put in a classic example before. We should be campaigning to have it under either public ownership or under worker or community ownership. They run as a co-op that way around a centrally planned economy, not under the dictates of a foreign multinational whose only prime interests are to make profit at the expense of everybody else. And that's something we've obviously need to put forward on our plan. I thought maybe in one alternative we need to put on our plan, moving forward, or as part of a strategy, is a big demand to make sure that comes back, that becomes a reality, regardless of who forms government at the time. That's all I wanted to finish off tonight. I wouldn't want to spend too long tonight. I've got to be up early tomorrow. I've got a long day, and I've got to go up to Mildura, which is a good 4.5 hour drive up there. I've got a big mass meeting I've got to do, and then go back down here again. So certainly it's a long day out, and a lot of that driving does take the wind out of you. So I don't want to be the last falling pine asleep behind the wheel of the vehicle. I'm going to be doing many more of my lives. I'm still going to actually try and get in a weekend live at the moment, but we'll play it by ear. Fortunately for us, we have Victoria. We have a long weekend coming up, 4 days. Just for those of you who are overseas want to listen in, especially Victoria here, we seem to actually have a day off around a horse race. We've got Melbourne Cup next Tuesday. I'm not a gambling man. I don't like gambling. Don't really punt on the horses, anything like that. I just like having the day off, obviously, but obviously a lot of us having a rostered day off on the Monday. Today in Bendigo was the Bendigo Cup. I was wondering why it was so quiet before I had to another site, and I realised it was a lot of people having today off here in Bendigo. But anyway, on the quirky moments of Australia. Yeah, well, I think we're probably the only country in the whole world that would have a day off around a horse race. But anyway, that's not so a major issue for us at the moment to worry about. I think we've got most of the other big items to worry about at the moment. So that's something we just want to have a look at here. Keep it in mind, and I just wanted to share that with you tonight, generate the discussion. For anyone watching this later on, have a think about it. Even have a look at those of you overseas. Have a look about who owns the actual food production, who owns it, and find and have a good research and maybe put a demand into one of the things for the struggle. One of our key demands is have the food production back under public ownership and work and community control again. So it's also a form of food security. Also, we guarantee that we have got a meal on the plate every night, or breakfast in the morning, etc. And that stops our eating food from being priced out of the market. So generally, working class people like ourselves can afford to eat as well. So that's about it tonight. I'm sorry about this. Once again, I apologise about the technical stuff up before. I was supposed to kick this off at 7:30. I've got this great little camera. It's working good now. And also, I'm just using this other laptop at the moment. But what happened when I started filming, it was filming the back rear of it. And I was trying to find out how to actually switch the whole thing around. I had to stop it, reload it, stop, reload, and it was just been a pain. I won't say the expletive about it before, but sometimes myself and technology sometimes do not mix. And like I said, once again, just jokingly about it, sometimes I mean it, computers are very evil. They must be punished at times. So yeah, they've. I certainly with this one, I was really drive me mad. But anyway, we get through that. It happens, and the sky is not caving in for over it. So look, thank you once again, and thank you, Comrade Freaky, for joining in. And if you could kindly share this up wide with everybody as well, people on the channel. We are trying to build a community here. It's part of a worldwide thing, I believe. Obviously, talking to Caleb a lot, Caleb Morpin a lot. Go to his channel, and also Dust James as well. Where I go as a good friend and comrade as well, and many others out there. I think we're building a worldwide community here. Taking account too, I have been in some discussions where with a few comrades about actually organising a Centre of Political Innovation Australia. It's something that's in the pipeline at the moment. It's just early stages, but we would like to do this properly, and because we're certainly inspired about what happened the other week there via the Zoom in. All right, well, once again, thank you. I'm gonna clock off for the night, and it's been a long day again, and I'm up for another long day tomorrow. So take it easy. Be safe, everyone. Stay safe. For those of you in the US, especially, please stay safe. I know you're in a very intense time. It's very, regardless of who's going to be your next president, be it Trump or Biden, the struggle is really going to intensify. I do actually have to agree. Caleb, one thing, it would no doubt be a massive crackdown there, especially on civil liberties, a whole lot. So, look, stay safe. We need you all in one piece. It's a part of a further struggle as well. And look, you know, we're in solidarity with you here in Australia as well. So dare to struggle, dare to win. If you don't fight, you lose. Thank you.